wanted to give you some ideas about how to organize your paper for this course. Um, so here we go. A thesis statement is a statement or the theory that's put forward as a premise to be maintained or proved. So it's what you're going to say, what your whole point is for your paper. So it's always in the introductory paragraph. You can use it as many times people put it. It's like a main idea almost. But you can put it as the first sentence or put it in the last sentence in your introductory paragraph. When you're writing a formal paper like this, you don't use the I reference. You don't say, I'm going to tell you about. Just start saying it. You could say the North or the Union had many advantages over the South. And the South had many disadvantages. That's very basic. But don't tell me I'm going to tell you about the disadvantages or the advantages that one group had over the other. Don't say I'm going to, or this is what I think. Don't tell me that. Just say it, because I'm assuming when I read your paper that if you're telling me this, that this is what you think. So in formal papers, you take out the first person point of view, okay? My job is to teach history, not to teach writing, as far as it's not an English class. However, part of my job is to help you improve your writing skills. So that's what I do. And that's one reason I talk about conventions errors and things like that. So it's part of my job regardless of what content I'm teaching. So how do you organize your paper? You have to sort of have an idea before you ever get started. And sometimes that changes once you start writing. So if you write a paper and you turn in the first draft, you can pretty much say that that's probably not going to be the best thing. You're going to rewrite a paper more than once. So anyway, so your basic organization, you're going to have an introduction and a thesis statement. So you've turned in your outlines and all that. Then, so you've got your outline, but you can always change that too. It doesn't have to be what you turned in. I mean, that's to get you started, but you can change it as you need to. Sometimes when you write a paper, your research will take you in a different direction than you expected. And I wrote a paper, it was 35 pages in graduate school about the Great Awakening. And my husband read it to proofread it for me, so that, because sometimes you get in your head and you think that you've said something and you didn't. So you're so close to the topic, you already know it, but you didn't actually explicitly state it in your paper. So it's always good to have somebody else read your paper to see if it really makes sense. So he read this paper and he had so many red marks I could have cried. And so he was asking questions about things that I hadn't explained about, things that I needed to go back and look at. And so long story short, I ended up having to take the paper apart, re-research everything, and start over. And it went from a 15-page paper to a 35-page paper. And it was amazing, but that was a huge learning experience. So anyway, everybody can always learn to improve their writing. I can improve my writing. You can improve your writing. There's nobody that's ever perfect as far as their writing skills. So you don't need to take criticism too personally, because everybody can improve. Everybody can. So you can organize it like this: an introduction and thesis statement in your first paragraph. And then you can cover the North. You can cover the advantages and the disadvantages. This is just an example for that topic. If you've got another topic, then you can organize it however you want. This is just one example. So the South, you can organize it by advantages and disadvantages. And then you can analyze it, compare and contrast the advantages for both groups, and then write your conclusion at the end, okay? So if you're writing about another subject, you can do the same thing. You can take it and cover all of the North and then cover all of the South. Or you can do this. This is the next one. You can take all, your introduction and thesis statement. You can have all the advantages, North and South. You can have all the disadvantages, North and South. And then do your analysis and your comparison, contrast, and then your conclusion. So you can organize it a couple of different ways. So your outline. So what's an outline? What is it and what isn't it? Okay. So you don't have to be very specific, detailed, all in an outline. You can be more specific if you'd like. If it helps you, an outline is a working document. So you use it how you need to use it to make it most beneficial. Okay, it's to give you a roadmap, so to speak, of an essay or a paper. So this is what one looks like. This is just an example, but you don't have to. You don't have to be very specific, or you can be very specific. Totally up to you. So you want to research. You want to choose scholarly sources. Sources from Galileo, sources from EDU sites, EDU like colleges, universities. You can go to .gov sites, the government sources, like the Library of Congress.gov, LOC.gov is a good one. You want to make sure you're not using Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia. Now, I use Wikipedia, for example, to give you, I like it as a place to go for a start. I can get basic information there, and it gives me ideas about it's good for general information. Is it scholarly? Is it research-based? No, anything that can be edited like that is not scholarly, because I can go in and edit it however I want, and that doesn't mean it's true. It just means that I edited it. So it's not scholarly. You can use .org sites usually. If like I can go to history.org, or there are a lot of different museums that have ORG sites, and the museums, 99% of museums are good sites. They know what they're talking about. When you get ready to write, after you research, when you get ready to write, you need to put your research in your own words. Do not copy and paste off the internet. Do not just change one word here and there and think that's going to fix it. Because when your paper goes through turnitin.com, it's going to compare your paper to every other paper that's ever been submitted to their database. And it will come up with a percentage. Your goal is for your percentage to be 10% or less, meaning 10% similar to another paper. That allows for a title page, one very small quote in a paper this length, one very short quote, and your cited sources. Okay, so that's not allowing for very much. This has to be in your own words. And there are plenty of things that you can't put in your own words. Civil War is not something you can put in your own words. So when I look at your similarity report, I'm going to take that into account. What I don't go for is when you've copied and pasted a whole paragraph off of some website. Okay, even if you cite it, it still cannot be copied and pasted, because that is still plagiarism. And it's yes, you've cited it, but it's copying and pasting. And so there are a lot of things about plagiarism that are gray areas, but copying and pasting whole sentences that aren't quotes off of a website are just, that's not going to go. It won't pass. So you need to, don't flip out if your similarity report turns out to be 15%. I'm not going to flip out about it. I always research to see what is being included, because I don't want to accuse somebody falsely. However, you've got to be careful. So put everything you possibly can in your own words. Proofread your paper. Write the first draft and then put it down for a little while. put it down a day, and then come back and read it again, and then edit it. Edit your paper, and then put it down again, and then come back and do it again, and rewrite or edit as needed, okay? Because you'll notice things the second or the third time, so you'll probably have 3 drafts of it by the time you get ready to submit. Quotes. If you use quotes, be careful not to use too many. I don't want a paper that has a series of quotes. I want to know what you know about it. Anybody can quote things all day long and put a series of quotes together, and then that's what you've got, but it's not a paper. An essay of this length, you should use 1 brief quote at most, because it's going to run your similarity report up, because it's a relatively brief paper. If I have a 35-page paper, I can use 2 or 3 quotes because my proportion is still going to be low. Okay, so I'll still have some wiggle room. I want to see your information and your analysis. I want to know what you think about, or what the information that you found tells you. So if one of the northern advantages was that they had more rail lines, they had more railroad tracks, so that made, tell me why that was an advantage. Why was that an advantage? Because they could transport troops, munitions, weapons, supplies, and those kinds of things to wherever they needed to go to fight. So tell me why the railroad was an advantage. Tell me why the lack of railroads in the South was a disadvantage for them. For example, in the South, they were so busy doing their own thing, and they weren't really worried about when they laid train tracks. The gauges were different state to state. So if I had a train going on tracks in Georgia, and I got to the South Carolina state line and I needed my train to go into South Carolina, well, the gauge was different on those tracks. And so my train wouldn't run on those tracks. So then I have to unload everything and put it on a train that is on wheels that will run on the South Carolina tracks. These people were not thinking ahead, and they were so busy with states' rights that they didn't bother to standardize anything. So that was a huge disadvantage for them. The North, Abraham Lincoln made great use of telegraph lines because he managed the war. That technology was a great way because he could know what was going on at the front at any given time. So the North made great use of telegraphs too. So there again, telegraph lines were a great thing. The Union leveraged that to their advantage. The South did not. So you're going to want to get that analysis. Don't tell me, the telegraph lines were an advantage. Okay, but why? Okay. Similarity reports, your goal is 10%, including your quotes and your bibliography. Your finishing touches. Make sure you read your paper one more time. Cite your sources on a separate page at the end of your paper. Do not give me a paper without your sources, okay? Ask yourself these questions. Did you paraphrase? Did you cite your sources? Did you proofread it? Now, also, if you will send me your paper several days in advance of the deadline, I will proof it for you and offer you suggestions and send it back to you so that you can edit it. Basically, you're guaranteeing yourself a good grade, because why am I going to tell you wrong? So if you send it to me, I will read it, offer suggestions, and send it back, but don't submit it first. Just email it to me. You don't want to turn it in and then ask me to read it, because it will already have gone through turnitin.com. So you want to email it to me first and then submit it so that your similarity report won't be 100%, basically. I'm going to share a video with you about Word and how to keep up with your sources of information. So I'll make another short video in just a second, and I will post that one too. If you have any questions about this assignment, please let me know. Thanks.